Hello guys and welcome back. In today's video we're going to be revisiting Of Kings and Men, and it's been a very long time since I even touched this game just because of how badly it went after its initial early access release. Now don't take this the wrong way, because I still feel like Of Kings and Men has an absolutely brilliant core game. However, it's what the developers did with that core game that really annoyed me, and we're going to talk about this in a lot more detail later on in the video. Now, for people that have been around on my channel since the very start, you will know that this game actually turned my channel from being something not as serious at all as something I did for fun, to something very serious, and having people that communicate with me on a daily basis, and having so many of you guys following my channel. So that is definitely why I feel some form of loyalty to this game, and I'm never going to give up on it. To begin with, I would definitely like to talk about the positive things about Of Kings and Men. And the first thing is definitely the combat system. I love the way it works, I love the way it flows, and also how it's unique to this game. You will not see the same combat system in any other game. I do know a lot of Warband players did struggle to grab the concept, however, after playing it for around an hour or so, I did start to get used to it yet again. If you've never played Of Kings and Men, it must be very weird to actually watch the combat. However, when you're actually controlling your character, it feels very good indeed. Continuing on with the positive theme, I like to see how active the developers are with their community. They release weekly dev frames, and they always update the players when they're going away, when they're restarting development. For example, on the 12th of December, they did say that they're going to be not really developing much until next year. And I think that's always very important, especially with early access games. And also, as this is their first development, they need to make sure they harness that community the best they can. Another brilliant thing about Of Kings and Men is how it looks. The character detail is very high, the models are very beautiful, and the maps are absolutely stunning, as you saw from the intro. Now, they were just a few of the many brilliant things this game has to offer. However, now I want to continue on and talk about the latest update that this game had. Now, a lot of things have improved since we last spoke about Of Kings and Men. And the first of those things is added voice commands, which allows you to communicate with your teammates and the enemy using bindable commands, much like the Persistent World mod in Mount & Blade, which allows you to say certain things using the underscore key. You can also add selectable voices for a character. There's added personal soundscapes, and there's also added changes to distance scaling, which basically means sounds sound different depending on where they are. They also made massive changes to the combat. For example, they improved hit detection, because in the previous hit detection system, there were rare cases where hits would not be registered, and in the new system, this will no longer be possible. They also added a lot of new equipment, for example the crossbow. There's also reworked in-game collision, which we talked about earlier with the hit detection, but this also led to combat responsiveness being improved, and especially for the faster attacks. The attack speed was also increased because the speed of melee weapons was too slow, and it wasn't dynamic and interesting enough for the players. The general moving speed of the player was also increased because it appears to make fights happen a lot faster and decrease the time needed to reach the flag in Conquest. However, I still feel it does take a very long time to get to that flag, and I do spend a lot of my time running, especially as I'm not very good at the game in comparison to other players. So basically, I run to the flag, I usually find I get absolutely destroyed by someone, and then I just have to run back over and over again, and it does get very repetitive and boring, especially as I'm quite, well, relatively new. Another brilliant thing was reducing the sprint acceleration, because what I used to find is that players would sprint out of the way of a swing because it would engage instantly, but now it does take quite a long time for that sprint to actually engage. They also finally added jumping, which means players can now jump over small obstacles such as rocks and fences. The projectile system for bows and crossbows was improved, defensive stances were added for shields. They also improved multiple combat animations, which means the actual animations of the combat were reworked to make it feel and look a lot more realistic. They added a parry feature with the one-handed weapons, which makes them, in my opinion, a lot more useful, and it allows you to actually put up a fight against some heavier weapons, because you can hit that right click, parry their shot, and then go in for a quick attack. Now, in this update, they completely overhauled the original system, which allowed you to get better gear, etc. That's basically where you got loads of experience, and the amount of experience you had actually allowed you to get certain armors and weapons. However, now this has completely changed. First of all, there are new character attributes, so players can now specialize their characters by investing into certain attributes. For example, they can increase their melee damage attribute, but this will not allow them to add to their defensive attributes until they get more points. So you can see on screen how these attributes actually work. So you have certain points for stats, which are the top 4 options, which are health, I think damage, attack speed, and movement speed. Then you have the bottom 3 options, which are your skill points. Now you tend to get less skill points than stat points, and these 3 are armor, melee, and range. Now you get these stats and skill points by leveling up. Now you level up by gaining experience, and you gain experience through fighting, through getting involved with combat, capturing points, winning rounds, even taking part in rounds. Although this does give me the feel that the game is very grindy, and people with more hours will basically have a lot better equipment and will basically be able to wreck every single new player. And I'm not going to lie, this did happen at the very start. I got absolutely destroyed by more experienced players who had the best armor, the best helmets, and the best swords, and I just had some little bit of chainmail and a very rubbish weapon. This does definitely affect balancing. It's unlike Warband multiplayer, where you actually get a certain amount of money and then you can buy certain equipment with a given money, and every single player has the same amount of money, and it makes it very balanced and actually a lot more fun than being completely train wrecked for the first 3 hours. Nevertheless, in the latest 1.6 update, they did try and counter this by adapting the XP curve, which makes it a lot easier for new players to get to a decent level and get better equipment, and it's also a lot more challenging for experienced players to achieve a lot higher levels. There's also an added in-game money system which you get through fighting, taking part in rounds, etc. And this can be used to purchase respect points and equipment from the shop. Now the shop is what you can see on screen now, and you can access it through the in-game menu, and it allows you to use the money that you've earned through fighting and taking part in rounds, etc, etc, to actually buy the weapons and armor you want. Obviously the better armors cost a lot more money and the better weapons cost a lot more money. However, you may want to find your optimum level where you get an okay weapon and an okay armor. A hugely in-depth character customization has also been added. You can change pretty much everything about your character's looks. However, I really do not think they needed to add this in. Who needs to spend time on that when that time can be spent a lot more wisely in other areas of the game? Hint hint, the Epic. Whilst we're on the subject of the Epic, I would like to voice my opinions on it. Now, I had 90 people in TeamSpeak from my old clan, the Kingdom of England, and I'm sure a lot of you that are watching this were in that. And we were all on for the release day of the Epic. Now, the time came and the developers still hadn't released it. It still didn't work. 2 hours later, it still didn't work. A day later, it did finally get released. However, it still didn't work. You couldn't use it efficiently. It was, quite frankly, awful. In my opinion, they should completely scrap the basis they have for the Epic. It just doesn't work. It's too time consuming. It's too slow and boring. I don't have time to do that. It just takes too long for anything to happen. However, I'm only referencing to that overworld map that I'm sure many of you will remember, because I really disliked the way it worked, and they should completely scrap it or completely overhaul it and just start working on the open world that we were promised when we saw the trailers. And I think, in fact, I know that the company's biggest mistake was not giving us what they showed in the trailers, and that's often the downfall for so many early access games. Why even bother showing that when we're going to have to wait years for it? Now, I've spoken to a lot of people about how to improve the Epic, and a lot of them did agree with me. And that was to make a small open world map which players can log into and do what we were promised in the original trailer. The map would need to be big enough for your large open spaces for battles and cavalry battles when cavalry are finally added. Also rock formations, forests, it would be nice to see some villages, some farmland, and of course castles. Now, buildable castles was something we were also promised, obviously not in the release but later on, so hopefully they're going to be working on that, and then they can actually add them into a small open world map, not the size of Rust, a lot smaller than the Rust map, but also add a maximum amount of castles that maybe players can build. For example, you could choose certain areas of the map where castles could be built, or you could have a maximum total area of space that the castles could take up, or you could limit structures to 50, for example, and then nobody can build more than 50 structures, and then the map is wiped after a month or so. Also, I'd definitely like to see your multiplayer experience and equipment carried over to this, so you can use the same equipment that you use in Conquest game modes in the new Epic. Make sure to leave in the comments below your opinions on this, as I'm very interested to hear what you guys can suggest for the Epic. I just feel like we need something that's unique to this game that will stop players from just going on to Warband and playing, because at the moment it's just a lot better game and I would rather play Warband than play of Kings of Men. However, if buildable castles in an open world map were added with maybe a 200 slot server, they'd be able to have something that Bannerlord and Warband will not have, and therefore people might have an excuse to go ahead and play it, and I think the player base will also increase quite a lot if this is added. The last thing I want to talk about is the bug fixes they made in the last update. They fixed the spawn direction in Conquest game mode, where you would spawn in weird directions, I remember. It would also fix bugs with sounds, as we talked about earlier. They fixed multiple issues that caused crashing. I used to crash every single game. It really annoyed me. There's also fixed issues with the sky. You'd have fixed servers not using proper names. There's fixed bugs with the chat. Fixed ability to spawn with a shield and two-handed weapon. There's fixed possibility to gain XP whilst not spawning, and other minor fixes. If you would like to look at these updates in a lot more detail, I'll leave the link to their page, which has all the update features, in the description. I'll also leave the link to the Of Kings of Men's Steam page in case you do want to buy the game. For now, it will be worth your money, and they will be adding and testing new features in the near future. Anyway guys, I think that will wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy, and hit that subscribe button if you're new. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers and I'm absolutely blown away by that. Also, the small break I took from YouTube is now over. I am back to uploading regularly, hopefully every 2 days, if not every 3 days. Hopefully in the new year, I'm going to be showing you guys some more Persistent World. I know you guys love those videos, and I'm going to try and introduce you to what goes on within or in between clans, and it's not just what you see on screen. The amount of work that goes into it, the diplomacy as well between clans. I want to show you guys the other side of Persistent World. Hopefully we'll also get some Bannerlord updates in the new year, and I'm definitely going to be bringing out some more Bannerlord videos. There's still a lot of things I want to talk about, so make sure to look out for them. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an absolutely brilliant day, and I will see you in the next one.